More than 60 mining towns once lined a single 12-mile stretch of the new River Gorge. Thousands of people lived in them, worked in them, and in many cases never left them. Not because they chose to stay, but because the company controlled the housing, the store, and the currency you were paid in. West Virginia's coal boom lasted roughly 80 years. When it ended fast. Towns that had post offices in the 1990s are gone now. Towns that peaked at 500 people are down to foundations and rust. One has a population of 5. One has a population of 0 since 1936, when a flood took the last building standing, and one of them, the one we're ending on, required you to descend 821 stairs just to reach what's left. These are 17 of those places. Stay for number 1 because the number attached to it, 16,904,321, is the kind of figure that takes a moment to process. If you find yourself going down these rabbit holes, the subscribe button is right there. Today, we are counting down 17 abandoned places in West Virginia I bet you've never heard of. Number 17, Quinnimont. There's a granite monument still standing in a field here. It honors Joseph Bury, the man who shipped the first commercial load of New River coal by railroad in September 1873. That single train car opened the entire New River coal field to the outside world. The towns, the workers, the fortunes, all of it started here. Quinnimont peaked at around 500 residents. It had a hotel, a jail, a baseball field. The post office stayed open until 1997, long after the last actual residents had left. 2 segregated churches still stand on opposite sides of what used to be a community. One for white miners, one for black miners. CSX freight still rolls over the same tracks where Bury loaded that first car. The monument is still there. The town, more or less, is not. Number 16, Stoetsbury. A baby was born in North Carolina in 1917. His mother died 11 months later in the influenza pandemic. His father distributed the children among relatives, and this one ended up in Stoetsbury, a coal camp on Winding Gulf Creek in Raleigh County. No running water, no electricity. He walked 3 miles in temperatures that sometimes dropped below 16 degrees to catch a school bus. He played violin at church dances. He graduated valedictorian of his class at Mark Twain High School in 1934. His name was Robert Carlisle Byrd. He served in the United States Senate for 51 years, the longest tenure in congressional history. The school burned down in the late 1970s. A plaque marks where it stood. The foundation of the African American church is still in the ground. The rest has reverted to brush. Number 15, Caperton. This one requires a moment to explain geographically. Caperton was built on both sides of the New River in the New River Gorge. The river runs through the middle of it. So, when you have 212 coke ovens, multiple mines, and a need to move coal across a fast-moving river in a steep gorge, you build things. They built a 1,460-foot incline track down the North Bank Mountain. They strung 18,000 feet of aerial cable across the river to carry coal in buckets from the south side. They built a 500-foot pedestrian suspension bridge connecting the 2 communities. At its peak, the town held over 500 residents and more than 100 buildings. It was established in 1880, and it took until 1954 for the last resident to leave. After the school closed in 1952, and the post office followed 2 years later. The engineering that made Caperton possible was also what doomed it. The system was too complex to update cheaply when coal prices fell. You can't mothball 18,000 feet of aerial cable gradually. George H. Caperton, one of the 3 founders, the one who gave the town his name and built his family mansion there, lived to see his mansion destroyed in 1984, when a falling tree brought it down. It had been standing vacant for 30 years. Almost nothing is left now. Coke oven foundations, vine-covered machinery, river sound. Number 14. Sewell. There's a spring on this hillside that still flows. It's covered by a small brick enclosure built sometime in the late 19th century to protect it from contamination. The spring supplied water to the miners of Sewell. Today, it's one of the only things here that still does exactly what it was built to do. Sewell is the oldest European settlement in the new River Gorge, established as a ferry crossing around 1798. The Longdale Iron Company arrived in 1873 when the C&O Railroad was complete, built the first coke ovens in the gorge in 1874, and within a decade had 196 of them burning. Here's the thing about Sewell. When its own coal ran out in the 1880s, they didn't close. They spent $100,000, an enormous sum at the time, to build an 8.5-mile narrow-gauge railroad up to Clifftop to import coal from somewhere else, just to keep the ovens going. The ovens kept burning until 1956. The last coke ovens in southern West Virginia. The last resident, a railroad worker, left in 1973. Approximately 70 to 80 of those coke ovens are still there. The vault walls of the company store are still standing. The chimney is still standing. And the spring is still running. The town has been gone for 50 years. The water keeps coming. Number 13, Bramwell. The Bank of Bramwell was once the wealthiest bank per capita in the United States. It closed in 1933. The building still stands on the main street. Cast metal letters on its facade read, "Time-tried, panic-tested." Bramwell sits in an oxbow bend of the Bluestone River in Mercer County. The town is no more than a few hundred yards across from any direction. At its peak, it held between 14 and 19 coal millionaires. The exact number depends on the source, but every source agrees it was the highest per capita concentration in America. They built 20 Victorian and Tudor Revival mansions, and in a space you can cross on foot in under 10 minutes. The Cooper House, finished around 1910, has 24 rooms, a copper roof, and bricks imported from England. 14 Norfolk and Western passenger trains stopped here daily. Fresh seafood came in from the coast. There was a local rumor, unproven, still circulating, that the town's luncheonette was the first establishment in America to stock Chanel No. 5 perfume. Today, Bramwell has around 265 people. The mansions still stand, mostly privately owned. Twice a year, spring and Christmas, costumed interpreters open them to the public. The school mascot, even now, is the Millionaires. Number 12, Gary. J.P. Morgan's U.S. Steel didn't build a mine in McDowell County. They built a civilization. The Gary Complex, named for U.S. Steel Chairman Elbert Gary, consisted of 12 separate company towns across 77,500 acres, connected by paved roads and rail spurs. By the 1940s, the population across the complex was approaching 15,000. There were 27 churches, 10 company stores, a bowling alley, a movie theater, a country club, a bakery, and a dairy farm in an adjacent county that delivered fresh milk into the hollow daily. In 1923, the U.S. Coal Commission awarded Gary 90 out of 100 possible points for cleanliness, urban amenities, and safety. The workforce in 1915 included 271 African Americans, 360 Hungarians, 224 Romanians, 135 Italians, 145 Poles, and 117 other Slavic miners. The town shipped more than 200 million tons of coal over 54 years of full operation. Gary was one of the last company-owned towns in West Virginia. It wasn't formally incorporated until July 1st, 1971, meaning until that date, it was legally a private municipality owned by a steel company. The coal preparation plant, once described as the world's largest, was demolished in 1991. The golf course is still open. It is the only golf course in McDowell County. U.S. Steel built it for managers in the 1920s. Number 11, Virginius Island. There's a trail guide published by the National Park Service that describes what you're walking through on this 12-acre island in the Shenandoah River as not ruins, but half-completed buildings strong enough to resist further flooding. That's a precise way to put it. The walls that survived here didn't survive because they were maintained. They survived because they were the walls the river couldn't knock down. Everything weaker is gone. Virginius Island was incorporated as a town by the Virginia General Assembly in 1827. At its peak around 1850, it held about 200 residents, a cotton mill, a flour mill, a rifle factory, a foundry, a tannery, a machine shop, and a cooperage. The Shenandoah River turned the wheels and made it viable. The Shenandoah River also flooded in 1852 and in 1861, and far more destructively in 1870. Then, the worst flood on record came in 1936. It left no structure standing. The remaining residents walked off the island into Harper's Ferry and did not go back. The NPS Trail is a 3/4-mile loop. The water tunnels that fed the mills are intact. The foundation outlines of individual houses are marked with interpretive signs. The river is visible from every point on the trail. It's still there. It's always been there. Number 10. Spruce. At 3,853 feet elevation in Pocahontas County, Spruce was the highest and coldest town east of the Mississippi. Residents reported frost in the warmest months. There was no road in, only train tracks. Every person, every piece of mail, every bag of groceries arrived by rail. The West Virginia Pulp and Paper Company established Spruce in 1904 and 1905 to process timber from Cheat Mountain. At its peak, the town had a 30-room hotel with hot running water and electric lighting, a locomotive shop, a schoolhouse, a company store, and rows of housing. Around 300 people lived here. By 1920, West Virginia's forests were approximately 90% clear-cut. The company moved its pulp operation to Maryland in 1925. The Western Maryland Railroad moved in and used Spruce as a steam locomotive repair depot. Then, diesel replaced steam in the early 1950s, and that ended too. When the Western Maryland Railroad pulled out, it burned the town down, every remaining structure. They left concrete foundations, a railroad grade, and nothing else. Today, the Cass Scenic Railroad occasionally runs excursions to the site. There are picnic tables at the location, placed by the railroad, to give passengers somewhere to sit when the train stops. That's what marks the spot where 300 people once lived. Picnic tables. Number 9. Keystone. In 1912, someone published a pamphlet about this town in McDowell County. It was titled Sodom and Gomorrah of Today, or The History of Keystone, West Virginia. Written under a pseudonym, it described in considerable detail the neighborhood known as Cinder Bottom, a stretch of Keystone that operated as a red light district serving coal miners on payday weekends. Racially integrated saloons, gambling dens, brothels that served miners of all backgrounds at a time when that was genuinely unusual anywhere in America. Here's what makes this different. The same town, this same hollow on Elkhorn Creek, was also home to West Virginia's first black mayor, and to Minnie Buckingham Harper, the nation's first black woman to serve in a state legislature in 1928. Matthew Thomas Whittico, a local newspaper editor, coined the phrase "Free State of McDowell" to describe the political reality black residents had built here in ways that were impossible in the company-controlled camps surrounding Keystone. The coal companies appear to have tolerated the vice deliberately. Keystone was a non-company town. Workers who wanted entertainment had to stay in the region to find it. The Norfolk and Western refused to build a passenger station there, reportedly because of its reputation for violence. The isolation was, to some degree, engineered. On May 1st, 1895, 15,000 armed miners, predominantly black, gathered in Keystone and prepared to march into Virginia to force unionization of a neighboring mine. Virginia mobilized artillery and 6 infantry companies at the border. West Virginia's governor declined to reciprocate. That march didn't happen. But 15,000 armed miners gathered in Keystone, West Virginia in 1895, and that did. The First National Bank of Keystone was closed by federal regulators in 1999, at that point holding $1.139 billion in assets. In one of the costliest bank failures in FDIC history. We are 9 entries into this list. If any of the numbers, 15,000 miners, 212 coke ovens, 1 post office open until 1997, have surprised you, drop a thumbs up, and let us know in the comments which entry hit hardest. We still have 8 to go, and they get heavier from here. Number 8. Dunglen. The town sits 700 feet above the New River on the flank of Sewell Knob, inside what is now New River Gorge National Park. When it was operating, mining operations began around 1904 or 1905. The only way up was a 1,250-foot mountain incline that lowered coal to a spur track below, and switchback wagon roads that were rough by any era's standards. The last resident is estimated to have left around 1935. After that, the forest came back and Dunglen essentially ceased to be findable. When a National Park Service GIS specialist named Andrew Steele went looking for it in recent years, he needed multiple attempts before he located the cemetery, standing still in the trees, looking carefully, until a few field stones and a rusted metal marker came into focus. What's there? A stone powder house, foundation remnants, and that cemetery. The graves are mostly children's. The most recent burial is that of an adult woman who requested to be interred there, on a mountain that had been abandoned for decades, and whose coffin had to be carried up by hand, because there was no other way to get it there. In 2018, the NPS began work on a trail that passes near the ruins. That cemetery is still up there. Most of the names are gone. Number 7. Nuttallburg. John Nuttall, an English immigrant, started buying land along Keene Creek in 1870. By the time the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad arrived in 1873, he had already built 17 two-family dwellings, 81 single-family dwellings, and employed 125 miners. He anticipated the railroad correctly and had everything ready. Nuttallburg was the second town in the New River Gorge to ship smokeless coal. In the early 1900s, a young man named Carter G. Woodson worked as a miner here, shoveling coal from the Sewell seam to earn money for an education. He went on to found Black History Month. He is known as the father of Black history. He shoveled coal here. In 1919, after Nuttall's heirs decided to sell, Henry Ford bought the mine. Ford's project, vertical integration, was the idea that he could control every stage of production, from raw material to finished automobile. He needed coal. He bought Nuttallburg. He installed a 1,385-foot conveyor, one of the longest ever built at the time, to carry coal down to what became known as the Henry Ford Tipple. He doubled output, and then he sold in 1928. The reason was simple. He couldn't control the railroad. He could own the land, own the mine, own the conveyor, own the tipple. But the coal had to go somewhere, and the C&O Railroad ran the trains on its schedule, not Ford's. He could not force his coal onto his timeline to his factories in Michigan, so he walked away. The mine closed in 1958. The Nuttall family transferred ownership to the National Park Service in 1998. In 2011, NPS completed a stabilization project. The conveyor is still standing. The tipple is still there. About 80 coke ovens remain. The railroad that beat Henry Ford still runs freight through the gorge today. Number 6. Kaymoor. The Lowmoor Iron Company purchased this land in 1873 and did nothing with it for 26 years. In 1899, they opened the mine. The coal seam was 560 feet above the New River. The town grew in 2 pieces, Kaymoor Top on the gorge rim and Kaymoor Bottom down at river level. The only connection between them was a steam-powered mountain haulage, a dual incline system that moved workers up and coal down. At its peak in 1923, 560 people lived here. The mine employed more than 800. They were paid partially in scrip, a company currency that could only be redeemed at the Kaymoor Company store, where prices ran roughly double the outside market. There were no churches, no banks, no town hall. There was a pool hall, a ball field, and a small movie theater called the Azure Theater. There were 2 segregated schools, one for white children at the top of the gorge, one for black children near the river, 560 vertical feet apart. In 1960, a fire destroyed most of Kaymoor bottom. The seam ran out in 1962 and the mine closed. Everyone left. The mountain haulage no longer operates. To reach what's left of Kaymoor bottom, you descend 821 stairs, a wooden staircase that follows the path those miners walked every day. At the bottom, coke oven foundations, rusted machinery, building outlines, tracks. The new river runs through Double Z rapid below. The original warning signs from the mine operation are still hanging on their posts. 16,904,321 tons of coal came out of this mountain over 62 years. In 2005, Kaymoor #1 mine was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The stairs are the only way down and the only way back up. Number 5. Cass. Most company towns in West Virginia followed the same arc. The resource ran out, the company left, and the town disappeared. Cass almost did the same thing. The sawmill, once the largest double-band sawmill in the world, which processed an estimated 1.25 billion board feet of lumber over its lifetime, closed in 1960 when the timber was gone. What saved it was a train enthusiast from Pennsylvania named Fred Weber. He heard the Shea locomotives were about to be scrapped. He called the governor's office. The state of West Virginia bought the property in 1961 and 1962, and on June 15, 1963, the first passenger excursion ran. The Shea locomotive is a geared engine designed for the steep grades of mountain logging operations, grades as steep as 11 or 12%. Cass now has 8 of them, 5 operational, making it the world's largest fleet of working Shays. Shay number 5 was built in 1905 and has been running here ever since. The company town is intact. The row houses are rented to visitors. The machine shop still maintains the locomotives. There's a ghost town excursion that runs to the site of Spruce. The park's own historical records describe the neighborhood across the river from the company town, East Cass, as a place of heavy drinking, incredible brawls, sudden violence, and lurking danger. That part they did not preserve. Number 4. Thurmond. By 1910, Thurmond was generating $4.8 million per year in freight revenue for the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad. That was approximately 20% of the entire railroad's revenue. It was more than Cincinnati. It was more than Richmond. This figure came from a town accessible exclusively by train, built on a strip of flat land so narrow that the commercial buildings front directly onto the railroad tracks with no intervening street. There was no room for one. The town was named for Confederate Captain William Dabney Thurmond, who received 73 acres as payment for surveying the land in 1873. He incorporated it in 1900, and being a Baptist who opposed alcohol, banned it from his land. His neighbor and rival, Thomas McKell, recognized an opportunity. He claimed a strip of land across the New River as part of his own town, Glen Jean, which was physically located 7 miles away, and built a 100-room hotel just outside Thurmond's dry limits. The hotel hosted gambling, drinking, and according to local legend, a poker game that ran for 14 years without stopping. The legend has never been formally verified, but it has survived in print for over a century. The hotel burned in 1930. The Great Depression took the bank in 1931. The town went quiet. A road finally arrived in 1921, but by then, the railroad era was ending, and it didn't matter. In the 2005 municipal elections, 6 of Thurmond's 7 residents ran for elected office simultaneously. Today, the population is 5. The 1903 depot is an NPS visitor center and an active Amtrak station on the Cardinal Route, which runs between New York and Chicago. An average of 10 to 24 freight trains pass through each day. The 1987 film Matewan was partly shot here because the town looked so much like the 1920s that minimal set dressing was needed. It still does. Number 3. Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, Weston. Construction began in 1858. The building was designed by architect Richard Snowden Andrews using the Kirkbride plan, a psychiatric philosophy that held environment itself could heal mental illness. Long batwing wings to maximize light and airflow. Pleasant grounds, a working farm, a working dairy, space for 250 patients. Virginia authorized it. West Virginia, newly formed, took it over during the Civil War and admitted its first patients in 1864. For a time, the design worked. Then, the legislature kept underfunding it while the courts kept committing patients. By the 1950s, the building held 2,400 people, 10 times its intended capacity. Admission records from the early years list reasons, including religious excitement, domestic trouble, novel reading, and disappointed love. In 1949, the Charleston Gazette described the facility as looking like a hog pen and smelling worse. A 1985 inspection found patients naked, confined to wards with bathrooms smeared with feces. In the early 1950s, the state's response to overcrowding was the West Virginia Lobotomy Project, an effort led by Walter Freeman, the same surgeon who performed the failed lobotomy on Rosemary Kennedy, to reduce patient numbers through brain surgery. The facility closed in 1994. It sat vacant until 2007, when it sold at auction for $1.5 million. Bidding started at $500,000. The new owner renamed it back to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum and opened it for tours in 2008. Most of it remains in the condition it was found in. Over 2,000 people are buried in the on-site cemetery. The main building is claimed to be the second largest hand-cut sandstone structure in the world, after the Kremlin. The clock tower has clocks on 3 of its 4 sides. No one knows why one face was left blank. No record of the decision survives. Number 2. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park near Princeton. In 1783, a settler named Mitchell Clay established a farm on this land in Mercer County. While he and other men were away hunting, members of the Shawnee raided the property. 2 of his children, Bartley and Tabitha, were killed. A third child, Ezekiel, was taken to Ohio and burned at the stake before the search party reached him. Clay and the other settlers subsequently killed several of the raiding party. The land changed hands many times. In 1926, an entrepreneur named C.T. Snidow bought it, unaware of any of this, and opened an amusement park, Ferris wheel, circle swings, a swimming pool, a racetrack, cabins. It became a popular summer destination for coalfield families. During its 40-year run, at least 2 children died there. A young girl was killed when a delivery truck backed into her swing seat while she was riding it. A young boy drowned when his arm was pulled into a drain pipe in the pool. The pool was filled with sand afterward. The park closed in 1966, officially following a county health inspection order in July 1967. In 1985, a new owner named Gaylord White purchased the property with plans to develop housing lots. His construction crews found bones. Archaeological teams from Marshall and Concord colleges conducted a dig in 1988 and confirmed the area as an ancient Native American settlement. They found at least 13 skeletons, most of them children. White stopped the development. His son Chris runs the property now, conducting guided tours. When the swing ride was reinstalled in the 1980s revival attempt, the serial number was checked. It matched the serial number of the original swing set from the 1920s. The same ride had come back to the same property. The swings are still there, still standing in the field. No one ever built the houses. Number 1. Kaymoor. The stairs begin at the gorge rim. They're wooden, and there are 821 of them, and they descend through a forest so dense the gorge walls aren't visible until you're most of the way down. It's quiet up top. The further down you go, the louder the new river gets. You can hear it long before you see it. At the bottom, the light changes. The canopy closes in, and then, gradually, the ruins begin to appear. A coke oven. Another. A line of them terraced into the hillside, stone mouths open, vegetation growing through the grates. Rusted conveyor sections. The outline of a building where the coal was processed. Railroad tracks going nowhere. Interpretive signs still hanging from their original posts, faded but readable. Signs that were put up to warn miners of specific hazards and that no one has seen fit to take down. This is Kaymoor Bottom, and it has been here since 1900. The Lowmore Iron Company held this land for 26 years before opening the mine. They needed the terrain. The Sewell coal seam ran through the gorge wall 560 feet above the river, but the terrain was punishing. They built a dual incline system to move workers up and coal down. They built the town in two halves, one on the gorge rim, one here at river level. At its peak in 1923, 560 people lived across both levels. The miners were paid in scrip, company currency. It was only valid at the company store, where prices were roughly double the outside market. There were no churches, no town hall, no banks. There were two segregated schools, one for white children at the top, one for black children at the bottom, 560 vertical feet apart in the same company town. 16,904,321 tons of coal came out of this mountain between 1900 and 1962. In 1960, fire took most of Kaymoor Bottom. The coal seam was exhausted in 1962. The mine closed. Within months, everyone was gone. The mountain haulage that had been the only link between the two levels stopped operating. There was no longer any reason to maintain it. In 2005, the site was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The only way down now is the stairs. The only way back up is the stairs. You descend through the forest, you spend some time in the ruins, and then you climb back out. What strikes people when they talk about the walk down is not the scale of the mine or the number of ovens or the rusted machinery. It's the signs, still hanging, still warning. Nobody came to take them down because nobody came back. 60-plus mining towns once lined this one stretch of the new River Gorge. Most of them are down to foundations now. Of everything on this list, Thurmond stays with me most. The idea that a town can generate 20% of a railroad's entire national revenue and then become a place where 5 people hold a municipal election. Which entry surprised you? And what did we miss? Subscribe if you want more of this.